of the story behind it.
Jesus dies in the year 30. A small group of followers of Jesus begin to gather in grief, lamentation, missing him, reading texts, and telling stories about what he was to them. And in that context, the religion of Christianity begins to be born. When the gospel's being written, it's shaped by a conflict between the followers of Jesus and Jews who reject claims that these people are making. Only the story is told as if it's a conflict between Jesus and the Jews.
Modern people tend to hear references to the Jews in the Gospels as if it's referring to an outside group of people. Jesus is a Christian and somehow the Jews are going after him. But in fact, all of these people are Jews.
In the Gospel of John, written in the year 100, Jews are called the children of Satan by Jesus. And an impulse that is very unlikely to have had anything to do with any opinion Jesus himself might have had 70 years before.
The church fathers were extremely critical in this process. That they really started what is called Adversus Judaeos tradition, the against the Jews tradition. This theology eventually, in particularly Christian-dominated societies, frequently led to concrete laws and social practices that made Jews extremely marginal and did not grant them equality in most societies until the French Revolution.
Church attitudes toward Jews and the Jewish people were so firmly set that not even the Holocaust broke it open, which was why the first years after the Holocaust were years of denial and looking away. So it's into that milieu that Sister Rose steps, and it's an incredibly difficult situation.
I got into examining why in the Catholic Church there were so few who responded during the time of the Holocaust. So I had to keep studying. I had to keep finding out. And it was in 1957 that I went to do my doctorate at St. Louis University.
Jews were concerned for many years about how they were portrayed in Christian educational materials, because Jews always believed that one of the potent sources of anti-Semitism was a negative and hostile tradition of teaching and preaching about Jews and Judaism. The American Jewish Committee sponsored a series of Christian self-studies of their own teaching materials.
When I got to St. Louis, it was almost as if it was providential that this was there for me. My mentor came to me and said, "Rose, I've seen your transcript." He said, "We're doing a study here of ourselves as Catholics. And how do we present ourselves in the books that we use in the classroom?" And I ordered the most widely used Catholic religion teaching materials, had them sent to my office at St. Louis. And to my sorrow, and not surprise but sorrow, I found some very ugly terms. It was frightening. For instance, one statement in the books was, "Jews asked for it because they said his blood be upon us and upon our children." The whole blood libel. It was really God-killers they were calling the Jews. And I must say that I almost got ill studying these books.
It's one thing to say there might be prejudicial attitudes in literature, books, or in social studies books, but religion was considered sacrosanct.
So who's Rose Thering that she thinks she can go into these books, study them, present them in another way?
I remember her telling me about the atmosphere that prevailed in the hall at St. Louis University when they released the results of her study, she said you could cut the tension with a knife.
After I finished presenting, let me just tell you that one Monsignor got up and said, I don't understand Sister Rose Theron's criteria.
While she was making this report, one of the bishops went out and called the archdiocese and basically said there's some nun in here criticizing the church and tried to get her put down.
Well, I left that conference, and I didn't return to St. Louis for about 2 weeks.
I always thought that that was one of the experiences that radicalized Rose. Instead of being cowed, she became, if anything, more courageous.
I went to Milwaukee, and the Archbishop said, come and see me. We went, and he said, I don't like you to hang our dirty laundry on the line. So I said, so you don't want me to go on? And finally, he says I can go on. But don't hang my wash on the line. I hung it.
Her studies actually formed the basis of scholarly memoranda, which was submitted to the Vatican Council.
The year's end brings an announcement of marked significance in church circles, as Pope John XXIII formally announces the convocation of an ecumenical council to be held in 1962. This is the first meeting of its kind to be convened in 93 years and will deal with many internal church matters.
Cardinal Bea looked at my dissertations and said, if this is in our textbook, this has to go. This cannot be there.
The struggle within the Vatican Council at the time was a very, very interesting struggle. Those forces which were for change and those forces afraid that the authority of the church would be diminished. It was a cliffhanger, it really was, at the council.
In 1965, the last document to get passed was Nostra Aetate. It almost didn't get passed because there was so much anti-Jewishness among the cardinals at the council. But thank God that Nostra Aetate was passed, and only in 15 Latin lines changed our relationship to Jews and Judaism forever, putting it to a positive relationship, which had been negative for 2,000 years. And that document said, we Christians cannot blame Jews for the death of Jesus. And it gave the reasons why. No more, no harm, no one can ever say it. And if you ever hear somebody say that, you need to tell them, you better study your religion, because it doesn't teach that anymore. It was our sins that Jesus chose to die for. I live now in New Jersey, in the Metro West Jewish Center, near Seton University. I came here to work at the Institute of Judeo-Christian Studies at the invitation of its founder, Monsignor John M. Osterreicher. There was more work that I had to do. We have here at Seton Hall University the only graduate department for Jewish Christian Studies in the nation.
Sister Rose was both a pioneer and, in many cases, a rebel. She took Vatican II very seriously. She was, in a determined way, committed to its implementation come hell or high water.
We'll rely on the next chairman.
Take a look at these new texts.
It's brand new, just off the press. There's frequent mentions of Jews, and I just wanted to show you the picture, which I thought was very well done.
One of the things that happened is that pretty much changes were announced, they were enacted, but I think a failure on the part of the church to really teach the reasons and to help people sort of take ownership of the changes. So there was a lot of controversy and disagreement and so forth, but not enough good education.
I think at a popular level persists the feeling that the Jews were responsible for the murder of Christ, and that they bear a special burden for it, and that in a way they're cursed.
You can have clean, good textbooks, but unless you change how teachers think about the relationship between Judaism and Christianity, textbooks don't make all that much difference.
Since Vatican II, since Nostra Aetate, if these institutions are worth their salt, They should be out there carrying out Nostra Aetate. Where in the world are they? With anti-Semitism spreading across Belgium, Holland, Germany, France. And I think, again, we as Catholic universities have a responsibility. Therefore, Luna, I'm sorry, you're my chairperson, but I still will say, I think our first outreach should be to these individuals at these Catholic universities. What are you doing? Do something or close up.
All in favor?
The difference between Rose and a whole variety of people who have tried to get the Catholic Church to be more responsive to the best of its own teachings, Rose, more than anybody else, has thoroughly identified with Jewish history and Jewish feelings. So perhaps more than anyone else, she responds to situations almost with a Jewish heart, with her Roman Catholic conscience and with a Jewish heart.
There was no question that she was committed with passion, and she really wanted you to share that same passion and that same commitment, and anything less than that wasn't quite satisfactory.
She's still a faithful Roman Catholic. She's sometimes critical of her own church, and that hasn't been an easy road for her to hoe, but she's a very feisty woman, very gutsy woman, and not easy to cow.
I went to Austria to protest Kurt Waldheim, who was being inaugurated as president.
New evidence has been published against Kurt Waldheim, labeling him as a Nazi and a suspected war criminal.
The last day, because we were going to be right in the path, practically, of Kurt Waldheim marching into his presidency, the police surrounded us, and it was a very ugly day. One woman said to me, You're not a Schwester, you're Jewish. And she grabbed the Mogen David from my suit jacket. One said, We didn't kill enough of you. We'll come back tomorrow and hang the rest of you from the lamppost. A few years later, I visited death camps myself. Auschwitz, Birkenau, Majdanek. If you go to Auschwitz, you see the plaster scratched off the wall. And you see the shoes, see the suitcases. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with people if they can go there and walk away and say there was no Holocaust. Pope John Paul II is the first pope and the only pope that went to the camps. He went to Auschwitz, he went to the Warsaw Ghetto. This is the first pope that has gone and knelt down and prayed for Abraham's children. And then he went to Israel.
This morning, the Pope, spiritual leader of 1 billion Catholics, prayed at the Western Wall, the Jewish people's most holy place. Observing a Jewish tradition, he left a prayer, asking for God's forgiveness for Christians who persecuted Jews.
There are no words strong enough to deplore the terrible tragedy of the Shoah.
Sister Rose used the model of the Vatican under Pope John Paul to push her agenda in terms of building those bridges, breaking down the barriers and the stereotypes of hate and animosity.
The governor of New Jersey asked me to serve on his commission for Holocaust Education. And they signed it into law that the Holocaust must be a part of the curriculum of every public, parochial, and private school.
The important thing is to confront in a very basic way what the horror of the anti-Jewish genocide was. What was there about that absolute lethal hatred of Jews? And that's the question that belongs to everybody, not just the Nazis, because the Nazis were drawing that energy from someplace.
We can see when we study the Holocaust what prejudice leads to. A total annihilation of a group of people.
There's no ignoring the Holocaust. It's the rock in the middle of the stream for history. We can't believe in progress the way our ancestors did because of the Holocaust. Because we watched this most civilized, technologically, economically advanced country commit the most barbaric acts that the human imagination is capable of.